Hi, I'm Rebecca Vanook. I am the editor for Reference and Collection Management at Booklist Publications. And joining me today is Duncan Smith, the Vice President of EBSCO's Novelist, and Becky Spratford, librarian, consultant, and blogger who runs the RA for All website. And we'll get links to all of our stuff at the end. Don't worry, you'll know all about us by then. So as Louise mentioned, this is part of the RA Conversation series, which is a new series of CE that we're doing here at Rails, which is sponsored by Novelist, Booklist, and Rails. And I wanted to do a really quick thank you to Rails for letting us use your awesome facility and for helping us promote it, and for your talented team for the video recording. We're really excited about having that. And I'm just going to go right into it, I think, give you a real quick. This is part of this RA Conversations series, and we really do want this to be a conversation, not just a lecture. So while we're going through everything, please feel free, those of you who are here, sorry video people watching this weeks later, you can contact us afterwards though. We've got our emails on the last slide. But those of you here today, please feel free to jump in, raise your hand, ask questions, ask for clarifications, anything like that. And we do also have lots of time built in at the end, so that you can give us your RA ailments and we can hopefully find prescriptions for you. So without further ado, let's get right into it with Duncan.
Thank you, Rebecca. What we're going to do this afternoon is actually start our diagnoses process here, but we need to talk a little bit about the system that public libraries operate in if we're going to figure out what the strengths and weaknesses and how to fix what ails you. We think about, the library fits into a reader's and into a community's reading landscape. And that landscape sort of has three major components to it. There's a discovery component, a discernment component, and a delivery component. And if we want to talk about discovery for a second, while there are readers who come to the library and discover titles within the library, what study after study points out is that that is not the typical way that readers tend to learn about authors, titles, genres, and new books to read. If you click underneath, what you'll see there is that family and friends are the primary sources where we learn about books we want to read. Colleagues, coworkers are another. And then the media is another source. There are several other sources, but these are some examples of the primary ones. After my coworker Becky has told me about a book that she thinks I would like to read, then I actually have to go through a process of discerning or deciding whether that book is right for me. And I might pursue that in a variety of ways. I might go look at a social reading site, for example, and see what other readers are saying about that book. I might look at the ratings on online services or in library catalogs. Professional reviews might also be something that, well, I frequently consult those. And if I'm in an online or a digital situation, if I can get to a sample chapter, I might read a few pages of that chapter before I decide whether I'm going to download the book or not. If I'm actually in a physical location, well, while we're not supposed to, I think we all know that we tend to judge a book by its cover. And I might even actually pick it up, see if the type is one that I like and it's the right size, even if the book is either thick enough or thin enough, based on my preferences. So that's the discernment process. Then we move, once we've decided, if I've decided that a book is right for me, then I move into the third phase, which is delivery. And this frequently triggers a borrow or buy decision. I'm either going to borrow the book from a library or from a friend, or I may buy it. And frequently, that equation involves two variables, time and money. If I am willing to spend time to save money, then that favors a borrowing form of delivery, and that's the public library's value proposition. If, on the other hand, I'm eager and I would rather spend money to save time, then that will frequently trigger a buy decision. But what you see is the library and these three elements, your library fits in your community and in your readers' lives along these three elements or dimensions here. And if we look at the next slide, what you see is the library's role tends to be very heavy on delivery and less so on discovery and discernment. If you want to test that, look at your hold shelf. Those are people who have discovered a book somewhere else and have placed it on hold. They walk through your doors knowing what they're coming for. And what we want to do is talk about and explore ways that we can help your institution, regardless of where you are on that continuum, to move towards a more balanced perspective. Next slide there. Boy, yeah, so that you can be both a discovery institution, a place where readers learn to make decisions about books they're interested in, materials they're interested in, as well as continuing to leverage your strength as a delivery resource. Okay, makes sense so far? Okay, good. Reader's Advisory, in some ways, in the old days, was viewed as a service that was involving putting books in people's hands. What the reading landscape model does, though, for us, is it encourages us to think about those interactions in a slightly new and different way. While we are still wanting to leverage our delivery mechanism or our delivery strength, we also want to move those questions that you get, does the library own or does the library have? We want to move that question from not being just a ready reference question, but we want that to lead to a reader's advisory conversation with the hope that that conversation will ultimately lead to a relationship with the readers in our communities. And since we're going to talk about relationships here, we need to talk about the two major components of a relationship. And in the reader's advisory realm, that is readers and staff. But I'm going to start with readers first of all. What we're looking at here is a grid that looks at readers along two dimensions. One dimension is how much time does the reader have to interact or spend with the library. And the other is what level of touch or engagement does the reader want with the library and with library staff. So if you look at the upper left-hand quadrant there, what you see is you have a reader there who has lots of time and wants a high-touch relationship. These are the people, and you know these people, who stop by your desk, have a conversation with you, talk about the books they've read, want to know what you've read that's good lately. These are the people who show up for your book club discussions or when an author visit comes to town, they're there. You probably know what these readers like. You probably know their names. They probably know your names, but that's that high-touch relationship there. Staying on top of this grid to the right quadrant there, you have readers who want to remain connected to the library, who want some sort of relationship with the library, but they don't have a lot of time. These are the readers who sit at home, search your catalog for books they've already learned about, place them on hold, and then dash into the library and dash out. That's that kind of reader. In the bottom left-hand quadrant, you have a different group of readers that you may not know their names, but they're in the library all the time. And those are the readers who are browsing in the stacks, roaming around, sitting in your chairs with a stack of books, looking through which ones they might want to ultimately take home, also known as the browsers, all right? And if you want to see how important or how significant your browsing population is, a very easy way to do that is to take your door count for a given day, and if you count your reference questions, take the number of reference questions you've answered and subtract that from your door count. And what you're going to wind up with is the number of people who helped themselves. And frequently in libraries that we've been working with, that is a very large number, okay? So those are the browsers. Now, the last quadrant here, the no time, low touch, is the drive-by user, reader. As a matter of fact, those users would probably not identify themselves as readers. Every other quadrant would. These are the people who are situational readers. They either have a school assignment that they have to read a book for. They are dealing with an issue or a situational event in their life. I have to find a job. I need to learn about a health issue, or I'm going to the beach or on vacation for a week, and I think I'm going to really try to read a book this time. You know, they come in very infrequently, and they are situation driven. Okay, so different kinds of readers. Well, each of these readers, each of these quadrants, next slide, requires or benefits from different types of services. Okay, so those high engagement readers, high touch, lots of time, these are the people that you're likely to have those face-to-face conversations with. They're also, as I said earlier, the people who are likely to be in your book clubs or coming to the author visits. Those folks who want a relationship with the library but don't have a lot of time, these are the people that you want to push your readers advisory services and experiences into a digital realm, okay? So having things like e-newsletters that remind them of that the library is there and is pushing suggestions to them. Having making sure that your catalog and that your websites are readers advisory friendly. And also for those of you who do form-based readers advisory, one way of thinking about form-based readers advisory is that you're really just pushing the face-to-face interaction into a digital experience that is more convenient for the user and more convenient for you. Lots of time, low touch, book displays, shelf talkers, arranging your collection by genre, all those activities that support and extend the browsing experience, making that a richer experience for that set of users. For those folks who are situational, what you want to do is you want to be present, but you do not want to erect any barriers to their interaction with the collection. If they ask you for help, great. But you want it to make it very easy for these individuals to get in and out of the library, okay? That's one half of the equation. The other half of the equation is you. And the two dimensions that we look at library staff with in this particular relationship is level of book knowledge. And that goes from high book knowledge to low book knowledge. But we also look at comfort level with readers advisory. Are you comfortable talking with readers about books, including books that you've never read or books that you don't like? Or are you uncomfortable with those conversations? Okay? And again, folks who have high book knowledge and are comfortable. That's the Rebecca Vanooks, the Becky Spratfords, the Joyce Sareks, the Nancy Pearls in your organization. But there's another group on that top quadrant where they are really comfortable with people and having conversations with people, but their book knowledge might not be as strong as it could be or should be. In the bottom left-hand quadrant, you've got people who have a lot of book knowledge, but as Garrison Keillor would say, these are people who need powdered milk biscuits because they need the strength to get up and do what needs to be done. These are your shy people, all right? And then you have a group of staff who might be low on book knowledge and uncomfortable talking about books. Just as each quadrant of readers requires different kinds of services, different staff members require different kinds of support to be able to effectively serve their reading communities. If you take a look at the next slide, so for people who are like Rebecca and Becky, those high book knowledge, comfortable with RA, what you want to do is you want to work them hard. Is that okay for me to say that? Bill, you heard me say that, right? I know. All right. So you want to work them hard. You want to leverage their expertise both in direct public service, but also leverage their expertise in supporting other staff members in delivering quality service. And Becky will talk a little bit more later about how you can do that. For those folks who have good interpersonal relationship skills but might be a little light on the book knowledge side, you want to give them resources and tools that enhance and expand their book knowledge and allows them to engage in conversations with the readers that draw on their strengths, so that your users get the optimal interpersonal experience. For those folks that are on the bottom left-hand corner, they have high book knowledge, but they're uncomfortable in face-to-face interactions. What you want to do is you want to put that book knowledge to work. These are the folks that you put in charge of your displays. These are folks who, if you have an e-newsletter service, they might be the editor for the genres in which they're strong, so they can put that book knowledge into a publication that goes out to a variety of people. And they also may be people that you do displays with. Form-based readers advisory is also a good use of their talents because they have time to think, so there's not that pressure of being face-to-face. And so that's a good way of leveraging that expertise and helping move that needle in terms of moving the library from just being a delivery space to being a discovery and discernment space. For staff who have low book knowledge and aren't comfortable with readers advisory, Becky again is going to talk a lot about that a little later on, but what needs to happen here is these folks you need to have a very clear definition of what is acceptable service. And so these folks need a script and need that defined very carefully for them. So for example, it might be if you have reading recommendations in your catalog that when they get this request, they know to show the catalog, to look the title up in the catalog and show that, okay? And so that's sort of the quadrants and the two major players in Readers Advisory Services, readers and staff, okay? Now we're moving to the part of the program where when we began talking about these staffs and readers and the relationships that can emerge and grow when those two come together, we had libraries ask us, well, we need a tool that can help us figure out where we are and where we want to grow. And so what you in the studio audience have is a paper form of an online form that will be available after this presentation.
It's actually available right now.
It is? Oh, thank you, Becky.
On RA for All,
Yep.
today's post.
Yep.
It's available, so you don't have to write that URL down. You can just click on it. It'll go straight to the novelist assessment page.
Right. And so what we're doing with this assessment page is we're sort of listing services in the left-hand column that libraries might provide. And then we're asking you to assess whether you're doing a great job in delivering that service, whether it's something you want to do more or better, whether you're thinking about doing it or whether it's not on your radar. And we're going to breeze through a couple of pages here, but face-to-face readers advisory work is on this screen, and the next screen you'll see things like staff education, reading recommendations in the catalog.
Which if you're a Swan Library, you all have with Novelist. So make sure you know that.
All right. Thank you, Becky.
You're welcome.
But you see what we're doing here, and you can go on to the next one there. Sending book e-newsletters, creating shelf talkers. There are a wide range of services here, okay? Next one. Then what we want you to do is also then take a look at what you know about the readers in your community and actually sort of just based on your impression, don't spend a lot of time analyzing this, just sort of go with your gut. Take 100 points and assign that across these four quadrants. What percentage of your readers are high engagement, lots of time readers? What percentage of your readers would you guess are those situational readers who are only coming into the library when they have to? Okay, and so just sort of quickly work your way through that, and you want it to add up to 100, and that's your readers, but then you move over to the next phase, the other part of the relationship, and this is your staff. So again, take 100 points. what percentage of your staff are Joyce Sarix, Rebecca Vanook, and Becky Spratford? What percentage of your staff is Duncan Smith, which would be the low book knowledge and sometimes good with people person? Okay?
So modest.
You know, so, but that's what you do. And then once you've done that, well, then you'll have an idea of where you are in terms of services you're providing and services you're doing well and services you're thinking about. Then you'll see how those fit to the readers in your community, and ultimately, what is your staff's capacity to deliver these services and meet the needs of the readers in your community. And then once we have your intake form, just like you do at the doctor's office, then we can start talking with you about how to make sure that your services stay healthy and actually get healthier. Okay, so that's the concept of what we're talking about this afternoon. Okay.
Okay, so I'm just going to quickly introduce. So we have an example local area library that filled this out for us for this presentation. And we do have lots more, by the way, examples if people are interested later. This is a slightly different form. The one you have is the finalized 2.1, I call it. This is the 2.0. So it doesn't have, I believe, that middle area where we'd like to do this more, because when people filled this out, a lot of people just hand wrote that in. So this is, like I said, a library in this area. So I don't know if you want to go through how they filled this out.
So what you have here is in this particular case, you've got a library that is already doing face-to-face readers advisory. They are thinking about doing form-based readers advisory and thinking about readers advisory in social media. So that's an area that they think they want to expand into. They have readers advisory content on their website. Staff education for readers advisory is not on their radar. It's just not something they're thinking about doing. They are creating bibliographies. They're thinking about creating bibliographies, both print and online. They are doing book displays. They're thinking about book-based brochures or posters. And we can come back and talk about why that's important in a minute in certain situations. They do book-based program. They do shelf books according to genre, so they've split their collection out into like mysteries and romance novels, that kind of thing. Next page is, and so here are their percentages of readers and their percentages of staff. And do you want to talk to those, Becky, or do you want
to wait for the diagnosis, maybe?
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
All right. So what you've got here is type A. They have type A readers. And those are those high, lots of time, high engagement readers, and about a third of their population fits in that category. They also have a third of their population, which is lots of time to explore, but low desire for interaction. So those are your browsers. Type C is, no time to explore and a low desire for interaction. Those are those situational readers that I talked about earlier. And then about 20% of their readers have time to explore, have little time to explore, but want some sort of relationship or connection to the library. They want to feel that they belong to the library in some way. When you look at the staff, what you've got is you've got 10% Becky and Rebecca's. You've got 30%, I believe. Yep, 30%. I just had these glasses changed too. Who are comfortable interacting with readers but low book knowledge. That's your Duncan Smiths. Type 3, they're not comfortable interacting with readers and they have low book knowledge. That's my brother. And not comfortable interacting with readers but high book knowledge. That would be my grandmother, who is really good at book displays, by the way. Yes, ma'am.
That's a good question.
That's a great question. The question was, do we use the entire staff when we're doing this? And I think you can do this several ways. One, you can kind of do this as a personal self-assessment in a way, but I think it's very healthy And a good thing for the library is anybody who's interacting with the public, okay? Even if Reader's Advisory is not in their job description, if they're interacting with the public and you think that they could be a resource in helping you improve your reach to readers, because remember, one group is I don't talk to readers, but I know a lot about books. Yeah, so, and I'm going to let Becky, when we move into the diagnosis and prescription here.
I also want to address that question. I think it's really important if you understand where you are as an organization. Yeah. So if you have one person, like Duncan said, do not take a while to fill this out. Everyone we've asked to fill this out has all said, you're right, it only took a few minutes. I thought it would be hard. Yeah. And think about the staff you have as a whole. Especially, don't forget to include circulation staff, because they're interacting with patrons a lot. Yep. And a lot of what I do when I go out and train libraries and do in-service days is really target toward those circulation staff who are doing a lot of the book talking and the book interactions and need maybe a little more knowledge or a little bit more know where to send people. So if you can think about that as a whole, you'll get a better targeted prescription that'll solve the problems that you have.
Yeah, and to sort of reinforce what Becky's saying, a little over a year ago, RUSA's Reader's Advisory Research and Trends Committee and Novelists funded a study of the state of Reader's Advisory in the United States. And one of the things that we found was that I'm sure about the second number I'm going to give you. I'm not as sure about the first number, so just take this as directional. When we asked how you staffed your Reader's Advisory services, only about 9% of libraries said that they had a dedicated Reader's Advisor on staff. Over 70% of respondents said that Reader's Advisory was everybody's job. So don't leave anybody out if you're going to do this as an entire institution, okay?
Okay, so from what Duncan said, we can take this library and do two different types of diagnoses is what's going on here. So sort of what he said before, if we look at the patrons that are coming into this library, again, it's near here, so this is similar for everyone. I really believe that this library is typical of what we're seeing, especially from looking at, we have some data from the Pacific Northwest, and I've gone around and done a lot of trainings in different areas of the country. This is very typical. So we have a third of the users who really want to have that interaction, that time to explore. That's what people like me and people like Joyce, who's out there, have been training people for years. We want that face-to-face interaction, teaching mostly professional staff at service desks how to work with readers. But that's only a third of the users. And as we're going to see, and as you saw, we're going to talk about it more, that's not all your staff either, so we have to think about that. Whereas another large chunk of users, a third of the users, really don't want to interact, but they have time to explore by themselves. And so for this library, the prescription for those, that's 2/3 of your users. So we don't have time here today to go into every single minutia. So we're really focusing on two of the largest areas. So the prescription for those patrons would be a staff that's skilled in the RA conversation, because there are people that really want that high touch. And you want to offer a lot of programming that's tied to books. So this is a community that would do well with book discussions, that might do well with author visits, that might do well with maybe programs about books that are coming out. There's things that are tied to books to movies, lots of different things. In terms of the other third, you're going to use a lot of those really tried and true passive Reader's Advisory examples, things that we know that we should be doing. And in this case, this library wasn't doing all of them, but it was aware of them and was at least thinking about doing them. And lots of book displays, so people can have that discovery and discernment phase in the library, so they can pick up the books and hold them. Something we didn't put on specific book displays, but lots of, I see people from LaGrange here, like Lucky Day, where you go in and you take a book off the shelf that isn't holdable. And but lots of also, backlist copies, right, Rebecca, backlist, and have things that they might not know, things about popular trends. E-newsletters and forum-based Reader's Advisory, those would both be excellent for this library, because those can go out to people who really want to think about books and want to click on all those links and want to ask the librarian questions, but just don't have the time. I think I'm the classic user like that. I'm doing it all from home, and all my books are shipped to my home library, and I go in and grab them. And then, luckily this library is a Swan library, so the catalog has novelist recommendations in there, and we need some education to patrons that those are there now, especially easy to use in the new catalog, and also website information. But again, like I said, the Swan catalog now uses the novelist stuff really great, so you can just make sure people are aware that they can do that, and it's less work for you, and you're already paying for it. So those are some things we could say right now. Here are the issues with this patron base. Here are the ways we could service them better. Okay, now we can go to the staff diagnosis. And this is very surprising, well, not surprising, it's very typical, because here we're saying that this is a library where lots of people want to interact with the library. They don't all want to interact in person. But this library has a high level of people who are interested in discovery and discernment in their library, through their library. So, but we have a 70% staff in this case that have been identified as having low book knowledge. And we have a 30% that have high book knowledge, but only 10% are not comfortable interacting with readers. So we only really have a 10% who have high book knowledge and really want to interact with readers. But that's okay, because this is an opportunity. Because thankfully, this is why Duncan said it's two sides of the relationship. We want to make sure that we have, we're looking at both sides. This is a community that wants to have interaction. So now we have a staff that is ready to learn to have it. And thankfully, it's easier to educate our staff than it is to educate the public, as we all know. We put up signs, we talk to her, blue in the face, and they just don't listen. But we can get the staff better at doing that for us. So what we have here is the prescription for this library. And there's a link there, and it's on the blog today on the post, to how to do an assessment of your skills as a staff. But basically, I'm just going to talk about that it's doing a reader profile. Any of you who took my class, which some of you did this, or took it if Joyce taught it separately too, where you assess what you're really good at reading. So the idea is to assess, and I have yourself, we have it in quotes because it's not just you're doing yourself, but everyone on staff. If you ask them to fill out a survey, it's very similar to the survey Duncan has, and like I said, you can go to it, but it says, what are your 3 favorite books? What are your 3 least favorite books? What are your favorite genres? What are your favorite formats? Just ask basic questions. Then the management team of a library can take those together. And with that, we can then see what our strengths as a library are and what our weaknesses are. Because the assessment that you did, that the library did for Duncan, does not get into that minutia of where you're strong in terms of book knowledge. That's the next piece. So we know if we have them identify their strengths, a group of managers can come together and say, look at this, we have 5 people on staff who love science fiction and fantasy. We can leverage the competencies. I said I had to say it like a million times this morning. I still got it wrong. Competencies, and leverage those. So do we have people on staff who are really good at a specific genre or a specific area, or really read audiobooks? Because this assessment has things like audiobooks, graphic novels, large prints as things people can mark off. And if you do, great. Let's find a way for those staff with that high book knowledge there to share that knowledge with the rest of the staff. It's also a great team building opportunity. We're going to talk about sharing the knowledge in a minute, but that does go towards sharing the knowledge that you know is available. Now, we have a lot of staff here that we have some staff that want to interact and some staff that don't. When you go back and look, it's almost split down the middle. So if you have staff who have a competency in science fiction and they are fine sharing it with staff, they don't mind interacting with people and talking about books, well, that's really easy for you. You just set up a way that they can share maybe in an in-staff day or in a staff meeting, or they go to all the different department head meetings and share their knowledge. But if you're not comfortable interacting one-on-one with people, you can easily do that in some sort of, somebody can make together a genre guide, somebody can do a little PowerPoint that the other staff can use. You can find ways to share with low personal interaction. But as important as identifying your strengths, you need to identify your weaknesses. And that's a really great way to do. I have an example from when I was at the Berwyn Library. We did something similar to this many years ago, and we identified in the Reader's Advisory Department a staff weakness in hard science fiction series. Otherwise, it was very specific. Otherwise, we had a really general reading plan across our staff, and we could make sure we knew who knew what, and we shared. But not a lot of us had read some of those hardcore science fiction series. So we made a goal for a staff meeting for every person to read the first book in a hard science fiction series that they had never read before. I read Isaac Asimov, Foundations. But myself and the manager assigned to make sure we covered sort of the largest areas and popular authors. And then we had a staff meeting where each of us got to share. So we were, leveraging the competencies. We were all comfortable sharing books with each other and our staff. We worked many years to make everyone that way. They didn't start that way. And we were able to share in this closed setting, the 8 of us, all these different books and what we learned from them and what we can take away from that. And then the manager and I led a sort of a discussion as a whole, what else we could expect from this area and what readers we had that were reading them. And that was a great way to plan and take care of one of our weaknesses. But if you don't even know what your weaknesses are, if you haven't assessed your staff's reading and as a whole, where people are good and where they're not, you don't even know. And it's important to also use, statistics from your catalog or from whatever resource you're using for assessment of your collection, especially if you have a hole in knowledge. I just recently went to a library that told me, we know nothing about romance, and that's our highest checked out circulation. Come help us get better at romance. So in those cases, if you have weaknesses that you can't fill with your staff, you might need to use a resource like a book list webinar or to use the Getting Up to Speed articles on Novelist, which again, because those of you here in the room live in Illinois, work in Illinois, have access to Novelist, so you can do that. And the book list webinars are free. You can then gain more knowledge and do what you can at home. But there are times within of yourselves where you do have to bring an expert in to talk to you and help you do more. But again, you can just say, well, we have a lot of romance readers. And a lot of libraries have me come in and I go there and I find out there was someone on staff who loved romances and no one knew. That's sad for the organization and that's upsetting for your patrons. They've been missing out on this knowledge that could have been shared. So you want to make sure you're assessing everyone, back to your question, and doing that. And then we're talking about sharing the knowledge again. That was the next step. So we're leveraging competencies. Oh, make sure you're empowering people to train others. Just because your person, and I'm thinking of a library I worked at, somebody we had the strongest on romance worked behind the scenes and didn't work with the public. That didn't mean that person shouldn't share their knowledge with the rest of the staff. They weren't a librarian. It doesn't mean they can't share their knowledge. I have people at the circulation desk who are fantastic with specific types of mysteries. They need to be sharing that knowledge. It helps everyone. It helps the staff, and it helps your patrons. So make sure we're doing that. So in terms of sharing knowledge, we want to make sure that we are thinking about how people like to share them. So are we having personal interactions? In-person things, if you're engaging people in Readers Advisory conversations, if you're one of those people who is good at that, you should encourage others to watch you do it. You should encourage others to participate. Whenever I'm working with staff, I'm always saying, jump in and help. When I'm helping, don't feel bad about if you think you know something, and let them just observe you and talk about what you did with readers and share that knowledge. But also book talking. I just think getting everybody comfortable about book talking is a really huge key to having good discovery and discernment in the library. I created a culture where book talking was encouraged. We were encouraged to talk at the desk to each other about books and movies and TV shows, because they all go together. We were encouraged to talk to patrons. We were in the Reader's Advisory desk was in a high traffic, loud area. There was no need to be shushing there. We had conversations. We were next to circulation. We had conversations between the departments. Staff were encouraged to get up and walk over and talk about books at other staff desks. It's an advertisement for your services as a library. It's an advertisement for the knowledge of your staff to hear people talking. I tell libraries all the time, I have a whole training on how to do book talking from the very simplest form to the more complex. And we did a version of it with Booklist last year that you can watch on one of their webinars.
It's on the Rails YouTube website, or the YouTube link.
The Art of Book Talking, and some of that is in there, so you should definitely take a look at that. But you need to know that book talking sometimes is just being willing to share what you're reading with your staff member next to you. It is the best advertisement for your services that these people know what they're talking about. I try to tell library managers, encourage your staff to talk about books at the desk, number one, because a lot of libraries don't allow that. That's good. But number two, getting up and then encountering patrons in the stacks on their own space and just sort of casually talking about books. I like to pretend I'm going to the stacks for another reason, and I'm really not. I'm really there to find people. But I pretend that I'm there. Oh, I'm straightening books. I'm shelf reading. Yeah, and then, oh, what are you looking at? Oh, why'd you pick that book off the shelf? And just start talking about books. I encourage managers, though, to tell people, especially those people who are less comfortable with that interaction, give them an incentive. you say, all right, you say to that staff member, Duncan, you're not comfortable going to talk to people. Get up right now, you talk to 3 people. You get, you do that, and you get to 10 tallies. You get an extra hour lunch. Doesn't cost you anything.
To go home early today.
People love, I don't like the going home early always gets in trouble, but I've talked to a lot of library directors around the country, and they said the extra hour lunch is awesome. People would love that. I would get people who are friends with each other trying to get there at the same time and save it up. But again, it gets people excited to do it. Another library I talked to does $5 gift cards to Target. They just have a stack of them in the library, and they give them out regularly to people who've made improvement or are really trying very hard to go through. They're little things, but it's $5. That's great. I'm going to Target anyway, $5 off. There's a lot of ways you can do that. But encourage people to share. And this is also a way to get those people who are less comfortable to move toward being more comfortable. But then there are some people that are never going to be comfortable interacting. There are a lot of introverts in the library world. None of us are really here. Right. But I know some of you out there are. I know some of you personally out there. So what can you do? Well, one of the best ways is to, what I like to say is take your knowledge and put it somewhere in sort of like a knowledge bank, and there's some examples there, where you can get the compound interest of the whole staff. The best example of this is the Williamsburg Regional Library's website, their book blog, where they've had years of different staff members contributing, and they have a whole bunch of books that you can see. But really easy way, you could start a blog for the staff where everyone's just writing about what they're reading. And if anyone's interested, there's a really great example in Missouri. They do the Missouri Book Blogging Challenge, the state, and all of them, the different libraries, are challenging each other who can do the most blog posts about book reviews. And they put it all on one giant blog, so it's a boon for everyone. You win a trophy if you win, but everyone gets to use all the book reviews, and I have a link to that if people are interested. But Goodreads is the easiest way to do it. How many of you already keep track of your reading on Goodreads? Yeah, look at all those hands. You're already doing it. How many of you who are doing it, I know some of you the answer is yes, how many of you are doing it are sharing those with your colleagues? Are you guys friends with your colleagues? And then how many of you have had your library make a library shelf where all the shelves are put together? But the number's less, see? Yeah. You already have a Goodreads shelf. So does the person next to you. So does the person next to you. Get whoever's in charge of your social media to link them all together. And on your website, you have the library's Goodreads page, which has all of your shelves and has all of the rankings of the books that you've read. And even if people, although I do advocate writing down at least 3 words, 3 appeal terms for every book you read. But if you don't write down anything, at least it's linking to that book, you've given it a rating, and it has the other reader comments there. So if you gave it 4 stars, they can look at somebody else who gave it 4 stars. Although I think you should write something. You don't need to, because you might not have a lot of time yourself. But that is an easy way to help with get the staff more knowledgeable, because then they have one click that they have to go to see everybody in the library's reading preferences and what they're reading. And that's a great way, like Duncan said, if you need a script, if you're a staff member that needs a script, you can say, I don't know, let's see what the staff at the library is reading right now. You don't have to come up with it yourself. You have a place that is the library as a whole, the compound interest of everyone working together. You have one place where you can all go and get answers. And you're going to have that discovery and discernment taken care of. It's going to be a place people go. They're going to go to it from home. They're going to then maybe start to learn people. I've seen libraries who do this, and I've seen it with myself, with the libraries I've worked at. Oh, yeah, Betty, she used to work with me. Betty, she recommended these books. Yeah, she works here too. She's not there now, but that's okay. They had an interaction with her online, and when they see her, they'll be excited, and maybe they'll talk to her, which leads us to creating a referral culture. This goes back to your question at the beginning, which is why it was so good. We want to have a library, this model, where books are talked about everywhere in the library. And we want to ultimately get to a staff who's been trained over time to answer those questions. But you're not going to be able to train everyone to the same level. There's going to be people in the library designated, adult services, the children's, the teen. Those people are trained to do more readers advisory for their specific areas. So if you're encountering people, but even if you're one of those people and it's not your area, who are you going to refer them to? So at circulation, you and the other circulation person are talking about The Martian, because it's going to be a movie, and people are like, oh, how's that? I read that book. What else should I read? You might not know what else they should read, but maybe you've already taken a few steps and you have a Goodreads shelves where people have mentioned staff members who are good at that, have said read-alikes in there. Maybe you go to the catalog and you read the novelist read-alikes right there in the catalog on the record for The Martian, because it's not going to be on the shelf. So you need those anyway. And then or maybe you know which staff member who happens to be there. Because I know the reality of working in a library, okay? We have to share this knowledge in a variety of ways because we're not all there at the same time. Libraries have more and more part-time employees. I myself was recently a part-time employee, and there were people I never saw unless I specifically, came in a different day or went out of my way to see them. So we need to find ways to share this knowledge as an institution where it can be reachable at all times. But if you're sharing it, and let's say I never see Rebecca. She works on a different floor, and we are actually maybe time sharing. She's doing the shifts I'm not. I can see what Rebecca's doing in another way on her Goodreads shelf, maybe in a way, maybe she put up a genre guide for women's fiction for the library because she's the library's expert in that, and I can read what she's suggesting. Or she's sending out emails saying, hey guys, I know, everybody knows I'm the women's fiction person. Here are 5 new books that are coming out. Because when you identify the whole staff and you're identifying the strengths and weaknesses everywhere, you're saying it's okay. We're saying these people know about this. When the teens started being my responsibility when I was at the Berwyn Library in my department, one of the first things I did was create a links guide for the new staff. Before we hired a teen staff for the RA staff who were covering the desk, we had it on the web and we had it at the desk. So all the best places they could go for that, the people who needed the script, because they didn't have high knowledge yet, we were working on it, they knew where to go. It was all done via email, it was done with a piece of paper, it was done virtually. You gotta share the knowledge as much as possible. And then know who to refer people to when you need to refer them. Is that clear, people?
Another thing to think about with this particular library is that about 1/3 of this library's readers are high engagement readers, right? And so rather than viewing that as just a group of people that you have to develop services for, think about leveraging what they know to help address the lack of staff knowledge or the lack of book knowledge among staff. Turn this into a service. Remember, the objective is to engage those readers, and having staff members just ask a reader to talk about a book they've returned or a book they're checking out. That's engagement from the reader's perspective. And so the staff member is, educating themselves about a book at the same time they're delivering a service, because the reader is having their reading and their interests attended to, or their advice asked.
My favorite trick too is whenever you want to do a new service, I always make my book club ladies, who are mostly, as he said, they're the ones that are what was that, high A's.
Yeah.
They want to really have a live interaction, and they have lots of time. Well, I use them to try new services. Like when we started a Holds Without Hassle program 10 years ago or so, we said we're going to let you guys beta test this because we know that you are going to use it, and we know that you're going to tell us what you think because you have lots of time and you want to talk to us and share with us. And they loved being asked, and it was great because we had 6 months of getting all the kinks out before we offered it to everyone. And you can do that with a lot of things. And again, learn about the best way your services are going to work and the best ways you can do things. They're also going to like a lot of your passive things. They're not going to only like the face-to-face conversations. They're the biggest users of our displays, actually they use the blog a lot. I saw this on the blog. Tell so-and-so it was great, staff recommendation.
And that really is an interesting thing that I think we don't talk about enough when we talk about readers advisory training, is using your users. They are, these people. When we talk about this stuff, I see everybody nodding and I know the person dancing around in your head, right? Like, all these people. And we often think of training as, well, I have to train my staff. I have to train myself. I have to talk about what we can do as a staff. And it's time to kind of step outside the box a little bit and think about how we use those power users. They are people who already love your library, so they're going to be interested in helping you, and you don't have to try and impress them. You're not doing something for them. You're trying to get something out of them. And definitely, using them to test things that you're talking about, using them and their book knowledge, using them even in these kind of passive ways that when you're doing. I do a lot of talking about weeding, and so I talk a lot about circulation reports. Well, when you're looking at your circulation reports and you see, okay, this is an area that we have this really high circulation in, but we haven't been buying a lot in that area. What does that tell you? Think about what think about the things that your users are telling you, whether they're telling you in person or not. What kinds of things are constantly being requested from other libraries in your catalog consortia or through ILL? So what are you missing? What are your patrons trying to tell you that you're missing? Use that information that your patrons are there to give you.
I think that's to take it even further. When I talked about the book talking, when you create a library, I hate when I go into libraries, and I know a couple in this area, where you walk in and where the desks talk about books is, so where the adult services, if there's not a reader's advisory, is like a yellow or a red quiet area, you know, with the colors, like red means no talking, yellow means quiet. It needs to be a green area. You need to encourage talking, then you need to move where the books are talked about. So I know some libraries who've moved it to like circulation area because they can talk there. You need to have a green area in the library where book talking can happen, as I mentioned, staff to staff, but exactly what Rebecca's saying. We created such a great culture where talking about books was so important at the Berwyn Library. When you walked right in, we moved our desks so you saw us when you walked in, and so there were people talking about books. And there was no need to be quiet. We were near children's, we were near circulation, out of the little corner where it had to be quiet. And we got patrons coming by and sharing their books with us all the time. Hey, here's what I just returned. Let me tell you all about it. Because we encouraged it. And then I had a great experience only a few weeks before I left, where a patron who regularly comes and shares what she's reading with us, and she doesn't read, you know, she reads things that I don't read, so it was really helpful. She was sharing with me. Another patron walked up and she said, I heard you talking about that book. You know what else you would like? I had a patron give a read-alike suggestion to another patron, because we've created an area where people know that they can share books and discover them. And then that was someone who was actually just running in and running out and wasn't going to interact. She actually came in to get her books and was leaving right away, but she couldn't help but be, because she was interested in interacting with the library, wanted to be part of the conversation.
I'm continually amazed by the large number of readers that I encounter, many of whom are library users, who did not know they could ask for reading guidance. It never occurred to them to ask a librarian for help in finding a new author or title to read. And I was in Telluride, Colorado about a year ago, and I was just roaming around in their stacks. I was being that browser. And in the shelving area, there was this little card that just said, we really want to help you find your next book to read. Please ask us for help at the reference desk. And I just thought that was brilliant, because those browsers are the people who don't know to ask. They may choose not to, and that's fine, but now it is a choice on their part. They're aware of the option. So that was another thing that kind of emerged as we started thinking about not only where are your groups of users clustering, but how do you work to meet them where they are and let them know that there are deeper, richer possibilities for interacting with you at the library.
But the piece that's been missing for so long, which we've all talked about quite a bit, is this assessing where you and your patrons are. We've spent so many years, all of us up here, talking about Reader's Advisory in webinars and in trainings and trying to teach you the basic skills. But what we're seeing now is that, so there's some people with skills, there's some people who want more skills, but nobody really knows where to start because they haven't had a chance to assess what they need. And especially when there was budget cutbacks, and now we're starting to have a little bit more time and money to spend to think about these things. We need to make sure we're assessing what we actually need and putting our money in the right spaces and not just throwing it at all RA conversation, high interaction when I have a browsing population. So you take this really simple assessment for your library, and then you assess your staff. You really know which direction you need to go in much better than you knew when you started, and you know where you can put your resources. Again, leveraging where you are already good, leveraging those competencies to help you, and then working on those weaknesses. And so this would be the goal for every library that we're hoping to start thinking this way, is that you take that RA diagnosis survey and then you get your own prescription for your library based on what you see. And it's going to be different, but a lot of things will be similar, as you've seen all over the country. Yeah.
So I think one of the things this is very much a work in progress for us. As you've seen, the way the survey worked on the PowerPoint and the one you have in your hands are different. So we're growing and learning about what we need in terms of an instrument to help us think through what our possibilities are in terms of meeting the needs of our readers. So I'd love to hear if anybody has any thoughts about what we've talked about today.
Are there any questions or clarifications, things we can talk about some more?
Or anyone has a specific population they want us to talk about, maybe?
Yes.
I just really like that you talk about staff talking about books for something for sure. Hi, so I'm at LaGrange Library.
Jean, hi Jean.
And I just really like that you discussed, like about staff talking at the desk about books. And I think it does create the environment. That's okay, I'm a loudspeaker, I think. And also I was thinking summer reading is a great opportunity. Like we have the cards people fill out, and I don't try to like spy on their title.
Oh, yes, you do.
But sometimes I see that one title and I read that too, and I'll say, hey, did you like that book? Or it kind of opens up an opportunity.
So for the recording, that's why we need the mic, is so it catches it for the recording. So she's talking about how important it is to encourage your staff to be able to talk about books, show people that you're talking about books. And the example that she used was their summer reading program. They have, I'm assuming that you have your patrons fill out a card for all the books that they read when they're submitting for summer reading. And there are ways, again, this is how you capture what your patrons are doing and put them on your side and use their book knowledge. So her library has them, you fill out this card. When I worked at the Elmhurst Public Library, we did that as well for adult summer reading. And what we did, so we had these cards, we expected people to fill out the name of the book, title, etc., author, and then just a quick description of why they liked the book. Maybe there was room for a plot sentence or two if they wanted to. And then we took all of those cards and posted them up on a wall right near the reader's advisory desk. And it was amazing how many people wouldn't come and talk to us at the desk, but we sure saw them staring at that wall a lot. So people that would come in, and again, as Duncan said, didn't think to talk to your reader's advisory staff, didn't think to talk to anybody, or didn't want to talk to anybody, but would spend all of this time browsing that shelf because this is an example that comes up in a lot of different reader's advisory training situations. How many times do the books fly off of the newly returned book cart, right? Everybody wants to know what everybody just checked out. What's popular, what's hot, what are my neighbors reading? 50 Shades of Grey. But that's the thing, right? Everybody wants to know that what they're reading is interesting, that it's popular, that this must be good if somebody just checked it out and returned it, so I'm gonna look at that cart. So there are ways that you can do that passively, and it's really important for us, I think, as librarians to remember that we're very comfortable in our library. We know where things are. We know what's expected of a library. So many of our patrons aren't, though. I think when Duncan was saying, you have these people that they had to be told, they had to see on a card, come ask me at the shelf, and you think, well, who doesn't know that? A lot of people don't know that. And right, I see nodding, that's good, you're aware of
and
that.
Actually, what you're saying, Rebecca, the best thing you can do to get better yourselves, and you all came here, so that's one good thing you can do. But one thing, one of my favorite things when I go to give trainings at other libraries, like last week I was just in California at a library, and I went there early so I could walk around and snoop at how their books are arranged and what their signage is like. And that is one of the best things you do. You're so comfortable at your library, you know where everything is, you know where to go. Mm-hmm. But go to a library you don't know. So every time I'm on vacation, I just went on vacation and went to Seattle Public Library. I was in Pittsburgh for one day. I went to the Carnegie Library in downtown Pittsburgh. The more libraries you go to that you don't know, and in the different places you are, you learn about the way the library is, and I always think back to my library, oh gosh, we have that too. That's so confusing. You see things with different eyes when you're not in your building and going through your routine. Just like when, the patrons don't see our signs because they come in all the time and they never change. But you do if you go somewhere else, you can see a lot of yourself and what you're doing in another library, either good or bad. There's times I'm like, oh, I do that well, or oh, I got to change this. And that's actually my favorite thing of getting to go to other libraries and train them, is to see what they're doing. I learn quite a bit from that.
I mean, I know that in some ILS, integrated library systems or catalogs, it's readers can write reviews and rate titles. And in most cases, libraries are very disappointed in the small number of reviews that are written and ratings that they're getting from the public. And I think that in part is because the public isn't used to contributing. They don't know that that's a possibility. So another way of extending, just talking to someone about a book is then to say, well, gosh, you should write that review up and put it in the catalog. Or let me call up this book right now and you tell me what the rating should be on it. Is this a 5-star? This sounds like a 5-star book. Right there, you've, again, done a service, right? And you've also educated somebody about the possibility of doing this in the future.
And you've educated them that they can use the discernment of other people,
That's
too.
right.
They can use, a lot of times I've found that when patrons get requests from patrons, from their you find ways to do that, people are happier. So we have a staff, you have a staff bookshelf. We had one at the Berwyn Library, both virtually and on the shelf. And it was great, and people loved it. But what they really loved is when we had our off-site book discussions of our Book Lovers Club, and I would write up what books they talked about. It was sort of like a book sharing book club. And we type it up, and then we had patron recommendations. Those were even more popular. Because, there is a little bit of, I like to say, like, it works better when I stand up, but I'm not very big. Sorry, camera, for screwing that up. But even behind the desk, I'm scary. I'm the librarian. I have the knowledge. I have the computer in front of me. I have the power. The more times you can get out from the desk and encounter people in the stacks, the more that shrinks that uncomfortableness with the patrons, especially those that might not want to be interacting with you. But even so, if you have ways for them to engage, well, patrons liked this, or there's a way on your website that they can do that, that also works really well. And again, shows them that they can find multiple ways to find good books to read, discover them through the library, not just from the librarians who maybe, they still think we only read, literary fiction. Here I am reading all these horror books, and you're reading all these chick lit, and we're telling the world we love them, but they still think we only like the literary fiction. So, what are you gonna do? Does anyone have specific, library problems? Yeah.
Let me bring the microphone over.
So you guys touched on form-based RA a little bit, and it's something that I'm kind of intrigued by. We haven't done a lot with. I'm wondering if you have any suggestions for sort of best practices or ways to make, I think the library I'm at has a form, but no one ever uses it. So how do you make it visible to the patrons? How do you promote it? And what are sort of the best practices?
Okay, so first and foremost, you should feel free to contact the Williamsburg Regional Library. The people there, you go to their webpage. Barry Trott is the one that made that up originally. They are more than willing to share their knowledge with you and give you some advice. But if you have a form, are people not using it because it's too long? Because Seattle Public Library has a new kind of version of it that they do just 5 questions, I think, or just a really short form. And that would be where I might go for you. You have to assess your staff knowledge. I'm sorry to go back to the same thing. How much information does your staff need in order to make book suggestions? And that's the information you need to capture on the form. So that would be my best practice, is to go back to how little we can work off of.
Right, and I'm going to ask a couple of follow-up questions there. Do you have an e-newsletter service? Okay, you do not. Okay, but if you have one of the things that you want to do is you want to make sure that the link to that form is in as many digital places as possible, so that folks can discover it. And you can go, you can do this incrementally, or you can do this, globally. So, for example, if you have an e-newsletter service, being able to put a link to the form and a little announcement about the service that says, if you like these books, or if you don't and want personal recommendations, click here. They're already online, and so start with that population. In some cases, you might even be able to embed the form or a link to the form in your catalog. You know, so
Not
that
finding what you're looking
for exactly, you
Tell
know,
us what you are.
right, you know, want recommendations just for you, you know, and you can, what you want to do is you want to have your system administrator on speed dial, so that when that form goes live, if it is extremely successful, you could say you need to take it down for a couple of weeks while we catch up, you know, and then we'll. But you know, but I haven't heard of people being overwhelmed by the number of form-based questions they get.
I've also found libraries have success if they launch it, if they do a nice flashy launch like that online and in the library.
Right.
Again, you hand it out to your heavy users, the people
Right.
you know. You already know what they like to read,
Right.
but you can start to let your staff get comfortable answering them.
Right.
Because that's a problem too, is we tried to start a form-based readers advisory program, and we had a lot of staff pushback that they didn't feel ready to start suggesting in that way. They really felt they were better trained to do face-to-face. And would have fallen to just 2 staff members, and the 2 of us couldn't handle that. So we held off on it. But that is you want to make sure the staff can handle some samples first.
And another suggestion there is that your hold shelf, you've got people who are, you know, probably checking the library catalog and coming in to pick up their books. Having a little brochure or something that you put
In the book.
Might be another way to educate that population about the potential for that service, because remember, again, that's a population with limited time, and therefore they're not spending a lot of time looking around figuring out what the library can do for them. You know, so that's another possibility there. Good question.
We've had very good luck putting stuff in hold books in general in the library. I was doing a friends survey, and I was even giving gift cards to get people to tell us what they wanted the friends to do. It was a $50 gift card to Meijer, for goodness sake. But we got a lot, but then when we shoved surveys in every other hold book, we got them back.
Right. Yeah.
Don't do it a lot, though. They'll get mad. It's like the windshields, you know. And it's save it for the important things like form-based RA.
Are there any other questions or topics we can prescribe things for?
I have something quick I could talk about.
Yeah,
really
go
fast.
ahead.
So when I was talking about the prescription for a specific library in general, I mentioned finding your weaknesses and leveraging your competencies and your strengths. And I think that the next step is always really hard for libraries. Well, now I know what we're weak in. What should we do? And I mentioned, quickly using webinars and novelists to help you. And there's a lot you can do, but I wanted to let people know that there'll be a webinar here at Rails about helping genre readers that I'm doing in November. So you can do it from home or whatever. But that's where the area where I see the most pushback from staff is they're scared of helping genre readers. Yeah, and there's a lot about that in that talk. But the short version of that, because I see a lot of heads nodding, you're like, I have book knowledge about the things I have book knowledge about, right? So, and I don't, and I'm not comfortable. I will tell you that I think that the people who do the best readers advisory to genre readers are the ones that don't read in those genres. So I think my horror readers advisory, sometimes I have to rein myself in because I know too much. But in my area, and I bring it back all the time, is romance that I'm weakest in. But I work really hard to know the trends and know what's going on. But also, because I'm not a fan, I listen more. And we talked about this being a conversation. We talked about it being a two-way street. We talked about talking about books. If it's a genre you're unfamiliar with, the best thing you can tell your staff to do is to listen to the people who really like it, whether it's a fellow staff member or a patron. And what you learn because you're listening and you don't have any preconceived notions, you're hearing what they like about the genre. And then I love to take their love and their enthusiasm for it and use it to help them. So I can say, the way you talk about how much you love romance is how I feel about psychological suspense. So I can understand how you could feel that way about a book. Look, we all work in a library. We do it because we love books. We're not doing it for the money. It's for the books. So you have something you love. So when they're talking to you about something you don't particularly like yourself, you just think about what you do love and why and use what they're saying to you. And then you take that and you can then, if you are educated onto where the resources are, you can use the resources better. Because I know it's hard to go onto a resource of a genre you don't know. It's overwhelming. Has anyone ever gone to Locus Online? It's great, but there's a lot of information there. And I like science fiction fantasy, and there's a lot of information there. And it's overwhelming. You can't just go on there and help somebody. But if you know the specific type of, if they like dystopian fiction, well, guess what? There's a genre guide on Novelist that's like 2 clicks away for you. Or there's the, I'm on the steering committee of the Adult Reading Roundtable, and there's a list of time travel science fiction. We have authors who do that right away, and you can go and see that on Novelist. And then you can look those authors up. So there's plenty you can do if you listen and you hear and you use the words they're telling you to get the confidence to help them. And I really do think I help romance readers really well, and a lot of them are shocked when they find out that I don't like romance. One of the best compliments I ever got was when I finally read Hunger Games, and I admitted it on my blog. It was late in the game. I was reading it with my daughter when she was in 4th grade, and she's in 8th grade now, so it was a long time ago. And we were reading it together, and I talked about reading it, and how I knew I wouldn't like it personally, but that I read through it with her, and here's the readers I thought it would be good for. But I also wrote about how I'd been giving it out for years to exactly the perfect type of reader without having read it. Because I understood what subgenre it was part of. I had connections to that. I was comfortable with it. But I listened to them, and I helped them make connections. I loved Hunger Games. Why? And I used that, not saying I read it, I know what it's about, to help them. And so the biggest compliment I got was someone on my blog commented, I can't believe you hadn't read it. I always thought you had read this book because you had done so many posts about it. And I thought, well, that's great. That shows you don't have to be an expert. You just have to know, you have to be willing to listen and to understand what is the purpose of the conversation you're having. So anyway, I'll have that webinar in November. I don't know the date, but it'll be on the Rails website, working with genre readers specifically. And also at ILA, I'm doing a talk for the Adult Reading Roundtable on genre studies, which is another great way to get your whole staff involved. I have examples of just small staff genre studies, larger genre studies, just ways to talk about books. So even things like the thing I mentioned with the science fiction, just doing something very specific like the first book in a hard science fiction series, I mentioned that in this talk. Ways that you can talk as a staff about genres. But again, it really helps if you've done these assessment pieces ahead of time, because that's where we've been lacking as a group of professionals providing this service. Nobody's done this. And so I'm just blindly going in because the library told me they want a historical fiction webinar. But do they really need one? Did they actually really need a romance webinar that talked about some historical romances inside there? So you do the piece, the novelist piece, you do the reader profile piece on my blog, and you get a better sense of where you are.
And I'm going to go back to that link actually to sort of wrap this up, because we have links to learn more. And here, right there, the EBSCO host link to this survey. Now, Duncan, can anyone take this or just novelist customers?
No,
okay.
it's on the open web.
So those of you out there in YouTube land watching this in the future,
right.
Go to that link, please, and take this survey for Duncan to get your own prescription. And
while you're doing that, we should mention that this will be available on...
I'll talk about that in a moment. Yep.
Okay.
And then here we've got the link to Becky's reader staff assessment for different strengths and weaknesses for personal assessment. That's the link right there.
If you just go to RA for All today, today's post right now, the post that's up there right now, is
this
both
link
links
here.
on one post with a picture. It's the same picture we had on the first slide, so it's easy for you all to identify real quick for people to get that. And then for those of you watching in the future, it's under the recent presentations tab under whatever this was called, RA prescription. Yes. And it has Rails and all that there.
And these, this entire series of RA conversations that we're having, they will be, again, I'm talking in the future, it feels so weird. They will be all online at booklistonline.com in the Corner Shelf newsletter. Corner Shelf is one of our newsletters that we do at Booklist and is devoted to collection development and readers advisory topics. So you'll find all kinds of information there, but we're going to start showcasing these conversations in upcoming issues. So if you go to this link here for booklistonline.com/corner-shelf, you can see the previous newsletters and you can sign up to have them delivered to your email box. We will not spam you. They come every other month-ish. You can see the calendar there online. And that is where you will find a link. There will be a feature article each time on these, the series that we're doing here, and you will find the links to the YouTube videos. And I'm telling you this while you're watching one of the YouTube videos, which is weird.
But the next one.
Yes, the next one. In the future, you will find all of those there at the corner shelf spot on booklistonline.com. And I think that about wraps it up for us today. Oh, we do have one more question there in the back. Yes?
Say that again?
Email addresses.
Oh, yes.
Thank you.
Everyone's talking a lot about fiction. Does this transfer
Sure.
to nonfiction readers as well?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Oh,
No,
yes.
attention.
I do this with nonfiction readers all the time. And in fact, let's just, to the simplest form. Oh, should I repeat it? Did it not?
Yeah.
She asked if this worked with nonfiction readers for the future YouTube audience. And it does. In fact, the genre guides I mentioned on Novelist, they have them for for almost every you could think of nonfiction, adventure writing, food writing, nonfiction, true crime, lots and lots. But also, yes, you can do all of this same stuff with nonfiction. I mean, you know, we're not talking about math textbooks here, but yeah, there's definitely, and especially right now, but Between the World and Me, that book that's really popular right now.
Coates.
That is a book that I'm doing a lot of readers advisory on. That's a nonfiction book. It's nice to see such a leisure reading book, such a leisure reading friendly book at the top of the nonfiction list, and not a business book or a history book maybe per se, which I like reading too, but something that's purely a leisure reading enjoyment. Title at the top of the nonfiction, and yes, you can do all the same with that.
Good question.
Yeah,
All
excellent.
right. Our emails are up here on the screen, so if something occurs to you later or to our video viewers, please go ahead and shoot us an email. Let us know if there's something that you can help us with or that we can help you with. But see, look, I'm trying to get my patrons to do my work for me. See what I'm saying? So please feel free to get in touch with us.
All right. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much, Rebecca